Appreciate that. Um, I actually for the story, Ren and Rob shared, I didn't write it down here, kind of the revenue trajectory. I believe you guys are coming up to just about 20 million, 18 million, if I'm remembering those
Yep.
numbers correctly.
Yeah. By the end of this year, we'll be right around there. Yep.
Okay. What's actually the employee head count? Is 70? That's the number I had in my head.
We are right at 70, 67, let's call it 68. Mhm.
Yeah. So let's just start with what does buyer personalization mean to you?
Well, a couple things. So when I think about that phrase, buyer personalization, it's really centered around the messaging, right? Messaging to specific personas. When you look at industries, when you look at different verticals, when you look at your market specifically, and then you look at your product offering, how do those intertwine? And then how can you tailor your messaging and your product offering to fit the needs of those particular individuals? And what problem are you solving specifically for them? I think B2B sales, B2B in general has changed dramatically over the course, I would say, of the last decade. There's an influx of offerings out there. There's all sorts of different options. The buyer specifically is much more educated than they have ever been. There's access to information like we've never seen before. And there's also a lot of noise. So when it comes to how do you get eyeballs, attention, engagement, and how do you get in front of your prospective buyers, it's really centered around tailoring that message and really fine tuning your offering to really understanding what it is that the problem that you're trying to solve at the end of the day for this individual.
Yep. Awesome. I'm going to come back to a little bit later after we do some ratings on. Just would love to hear more. Yeah, a lot of our work ends up being how do you can have a really strong marketing personalization frame on your website, and I think GoFormz that's true of, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Segmentation by use case and industry, and
Sure.
roles a little bit behind it, really good content journeys, but at the end of the day, in sales, people have to sell it. And so the situational fluency is really hard, right? If you have a good
Absolutely.
personalization frame. So
Absolutely.
let's come back to your strategies for that, but helpful on how you think about buyer personalization. Um, we are just sort of thinking about different phrases that capture this idea of buyer personalization. What you just said is you got to speak to each buyer with the right message
Hmm.
at the right time,
Hmm.
based on their goals or use cases, their roles in their market segment. There's three that we are kind of kicking around. Would just love your reactions. This first idea is just very short. All buying is personal.
Hmm.
Yes, it's emotional. Yes, it's rational, right? We make that, but at the end of the day, it has to be a personal win in
Of
it.
course.
So all buying is
Hmm.
personal. We talk a little bit about life cycle personalization of the buyer journey, and then we also talk about personalizing the buyer journey
Hmm.
across marketing, demand gen, and sales. And there's a fourth one that is personalizing value,
Hmm.
buyer value across marketing, demand gen, and sales.
Hmm.
Curious for your reactions to those different phrases.
Um, well, I think again, kind of when you look at the B2B buyer today, right, they expect more personalization, right, when it comes to engagement. So from a seller standpoint, when you're really going through your due diligence and your discovery, how deep and how much depth can you get when it comes to really understanding their business as a whole, how their business is set up, and how your product and features and solutions and everything in between fit into that. So it's kind of, when I talk to my sales team, when we go back and forth in our team meetings and all our one-on-ones, where do we fit into what piece of the puzzle are we when it comes to their business as a whole? How do we fit into it? So that's really where I think the personalization comes into play. Again, it's really looking at the segmentation, looking at the industry specifically, looking at the company size, looking at their revenue. We're fortunate that we cover all different size markets, right? Ranging from SMB to mid market to enterprise. But all three of those markets, there's different strategies, different ways of communication, different ways of selling. So we've got this beautiful PLG motion that I think you've probably come familiar with, in talking to Ren, that really allows us to get our product in front of our users, to really get them to understand what our offering is, how it works, and give them a taste of what we can potentially do for them. Then where we come into play, through that journey, right? It's now on our sales team, to really kind of take them to the next step. So allowing them to get a taste of that, and then allowing them, to kind of evolve over time in terms of, again, understanding the different intricacies within their business, how we can fit in, how we can integrate into their specific tech stack, and other ways that we can help streamline their businesses, while making kind of that business case or ROI equation along the way.
Yep. So let's actually go, let's just spend a couple minutes on this before we do the ratings on the kind of the
Sure.
sales contribution to advancing and nudging them down the journey. I
Yeah.
know from just the conversations with Ren and looking at your website that there is clearly by use case and by vertical, these really well-developed content strategies where you have blogs, you have little video snippets or early funnel, the
Hmm.
self-solutioning assets with checklists and guides, the stories, right? That if people want
Hmm.
to go
Hmm.
deeper, so you're really guiding them down. How does your sales team, so there's three parts of the question. How do they recognize which journey the buyer is on?
Hmm.
How do they recognize where they are on the journey, right? So
Hmm.
sending presumably the next content piece or the next messaging or proactive suggestion, and then how do they reach out with that kind of proactive suggestion or content? How are you training them to do those three things?
Well, we've actually built a pretty sophisticated, what I call health dashboard. So gaining insights into kind of our customer journey on the back end, and understanding their usage, understanding, the volume of usage that's happening on a consistent day-to-day basis. So we look at a lot of key metrics when it comes to the usage of our product. The product is very sophisticated on the back end, which allows us those analytics to really kind of dive into, how many forms are being created on a daily basis. Where's the customer spending a majority of their time? Where are they getting stuck? What are different key indicators and triggers within the usage of the product, that will allow the sales team to kind of better understand where they're getting stuck, why they're getting stuck, and how we can better support them. We take a lot of pride in our customer success and our customer success team, and having best in class support. So I think a lot of those initiatives that we've installed, not just within this PLG and this and within the back end of our product, but the way that our account managers and our sales reps, are really supporting our customers, right, during that first initial 3 months of onboarding to 6 months. Like, we really break it down into 3 month chunks, to where those first 3 months are absolutely critical to getting the customer up to speed, training them up, getting their users on board, and then kind of, within that 6 to 9 month range, we know that we're either going to get that renewal, that repeat business, or we might see, some risk that could be involved just based off of that alone.
Yep. And if we back that up, so that's, you got data on the customer journey, right? That you
Hmm.
can sort of 90-day sprints over 9 months. Does your team, I'm guessing there are some trials that don't convert. Does your team handle that? Does your team kind of also have to engage to folks that either may not get to a trial, content consumption without a trial, but
Hmm.
we want to nudge
Hmm.
them forward, or
Hmm.
um, they've done a trial and haven't convert. Is that your team, or how does that net new logo acquisition relate?
So it depends. We actually a lot of that falls within kind of Ren's world on the marketing side. With when it comes to our signups, our organic signups, our customer acquisition, right? And then we've got a team of onboarding specialists that help support those signups. That we start to track conversion. So CTPs, how many of those signups are coming in on a trial basis, how many of those are we converting. We've got a team in place to help support that. We also have triggers in place to where if certain signals are happening or certain questions are being asked, if the conversation becomes much more complex in terms of integrations or size and scale, that gets handed over to my team. In order to engage them in terms of the sales conversation. We do have kind of a direct outbound as well as inbound, that funnel that's coming in on the enterprise level. So a lot of those are formulated through our partnerships like Procore, Acumatica, et cetera, that we work with directly, through lead gen and referral partnerships. And then obviously our field marketing and some of the events that we're working throughout the year generate quite a bit of leads for the sales team to call on directly. So it's a bit of a mix, to be quite honest with you, and we see a nice range, wide variety of opportunities that come from both sides.
Yep. Great. So let's just take, if we were, think of an example of the customer journey, this kind of chunks. Sometimes the buyer journey, as you said, if certain signals are happening, it's a more complex question. You might take those on.
Hmm.
So we've got good data, both
Hmm.
in terms of the acquisition process and pointing towards the renewal process. What is then the team, like, how does the team formulate its outreach messaging on both sides? I don't know if there's some examples of, hey, I've got a company I need to push over,
Hmm.
right? To get into a sales conversation, push them over to a paid subscription, or I've got some, you know, 30 3 months in or 6 months in, I have to proactively outreach to engage them with the next thing. I'm just curious,
Hmm.
are they given suggestions on what the next action is? Do they have to formulate that strategy on their own? How does that work?
Well, I think in our on our side of it, it can go either way. The sales representative obviously is well in tune with the particular use case, right? And the that the company or the organization is currently utilizing GoFormz for. Now, what we try to do is uncover additional use cases. What other areas of opportunities can GoFormz be utilized within your operations? Now, an organization at the enterprise level might come in thinking big picture, but really, I think where the conversion happens is that's solidified either in maybe like a field service opportunity, field technicians, whether it be in the construction vertical or within manufacturing, et cetera. Energy is a big focus of ours. But then, there's other areas of growth and other areas of opportunities that GoForms can be utilized in, such as HR, which is a use case in itself. So if you think about what we do and where anybody utilizes paper forms, which, as you can imagine, is endless. We can solve your problem when it comes to just looking at different areas, different departments, different ways of cost saving measures, and formulating plans to all come together to really formulate a data strategy, because all of that data is now flowing through. That data capture is a key component to it. And then where I think the bread and butter really comes into play is managing that data on the back end and getting true insights into what's happening into each world. So the sales team is pretty in tune with and trained up on uncovering those types of opportunities. And I think that's really where we shine when it comes to how GoFormz fits into the marketplace.
Yep. And when they suggest a new use case or they start to socialize that, is there a content strategy around that? Hey, and let me share this story of somebody else who's using that use case, or let me share this
Hmm.
checklist, or how do they,
Hmm.
we think of like, 70% of the buyer journey, they say, is now content consumption. And you guys have
Hmm.
done an awesome job of that. But, the reality is when we're
Absolutely.
cross-selling, often it's new content that gets them comfortable. So how is the team trained to think about that, serving up the next content asset, as I think Ren would say it?
Yeah, no doubt. It's definitely a team effort there on the content side. We generate tons of case studies across our customer base with over 4,500 customers globally now. As you can imagine, we've seen a lot. So we're really taking the lessons learned from existing customers when it comes to applying that to new customers, and vice versa, right? Some of the things that come in from a new business side, we might spark creative ideas on hey, maybe I haven't thought of that before. How could we potentially reach out to some of these existing customers and and start to understand a little bit more on what's happening there. So we do consistent what we call quarterly business reviews. So we do deep dives with those customers. We've got some pretty great video assets and content that Ren and team have spurned up for us. So all sorts of different ways to educate the existing customer and the potential buyer when it comes to, I guess, the utilization of the platform and how it can apply.
Yep. And do you have an expectation? I mean, so how does your team know? How are they trained how to use that content and deploy that content? QBRs is the capture mechanism, but now you've got
Hmm.
this library of stories.
Hmm.
How do they sort of stay abreast of, the data, like they say 80 or 90% of marketing content's never used because the field team's not enabled to use it. And you guys sounds
Hmm.
like you have a fix for that. I'm curious what the fix is.
Well, I don't know if there's necessarily a silver bullet to any of it, if that's what you're kind of alluding to. Look, I think it all depends, right? A lot of it can be trial and error, and I think it goes. What works for one might not work for the other in some cases. So I think it all depends on the market that you're targeting. We do a ton of kind of the obvious, right? In terms of content generation and utilizing that over LinkedIn, really kind of understanding again kind of what's happening and trends that are happening within these specific markets. Construction is our biggest market. So a great example of that is within the construction space, construction tech is booming right now. I mean, you see all different sorts of opportunities, all different sorts of offerings. AI is a big hot topic within the construction world. And it's really all about, okay, so how do we fit into that? Where do we fit into that puzzle? And then what are we really offering that we can formulate a plan to stand out? And how can we help some of these individuals sleep a little bit better at night when it comes to thinking about the business at hand and what's happening within their particular industry? So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I think there's all sorts of different ways to generate that engagement and utilizing that content across multiple different platforms and areas that I think could works best for us. But again, it's not something that is a silver bullet to an extent. It's a lot of trial and error when it comes to getting results.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. I mean, answers mostly the question. I mean, one of the things we've gotten in the habit of starting to say is that, your website is obviously your number one demand gen tool, but it's also become the number
Hmm.
one sales enablement tool, right? It's a
Hmm.
lot easier to
Hmm.
go to your website than go to a CMS, right? Or
Sure.
go into your and you guys have a nice, you have segments with content on the website, and I'm guessing
Hmm.
that is a reference point for your sales team. Hey, here are some of our best logo stories, checklists, etc.
Of course.
Is there any other repository of content that's organized by vertical?
In terms of
Well, just the kind of the
access.
latest stories. If you take construction, hey, here are our latest stories or our latest blogs or our latest
Mhm.
LinkedIn posts related to construction or related to healthcare or related to agriculture.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There's all different, again, sorts of stories and different use cases, right? That we utilize and that come through our core customer base, through our more strategic accounts. We take that, capture that appropriately. I think what we do really well is really that kind of internal dialogue that we have ongoing. The relationship, I think, with Ren and I, and then with the marketing and sales team in particular. That's really where when I alluded to that kind of process earlier around the sign up equation and what happens with the particular organization that's coming in and utilizing GoFormz for the first time. We put that in place for a strategic reason. That onboarding, I guess, experience that happens on the front end really allows us to capture what's happening there, because that's the most critical part. That, again, that first 3 months, and then I think we can take that and expand from there for other ways to, again, make use and value out of GoForms.
Got it. And so that's interesting. That 90-day onboarding, it sounds like is a pretty intensive sales to marketing collaboration around what's
Absolutely.
working, what are we learning? And I'm guessing if as you are then strategizing, hey, here are other use cases, here are other stories that go with those use cases, here are other contents. That's a kind of a learning forum, so to speak, to share best practices around content. That's pretty
Oh,
interesting.
it's critical. That first 3 months is absolutely critical because, again, through the analytics that we are dissecting, through everything in between that's happening within those first 90 days, we've started to get a pretty solid understanding and just in terms of, again, that potential for repeat business, that potential for expansion. Again, understanding what's really working there, what's going to work, and then how the sales team can then come in and start having conversations around expansion and growth and a further utilization of GoForms.
And in that 90-day window, like how many sales to marketing touch points might there be on average? I mean, I'm sure it varies, but
Yeah, it varies. It varies depending on, again, the size of the company. It depends on level of engagement at the particular, maybe executive level. So I would say on average, you would be looking at, within those 90 days, at least maybe 5 to 6 touch points. I think are worthy, and really allows us to validate, I think, more than anything, how the technology can be intertwined and integrated into what they're trying to accomplish. And that's really where we start to get into the data conversation. What do you really want to start doing with this data? So now you got a taste of it, you got a piece of it. What can we do next, and how can we start to formulate a longer term plan around your data and what you're going to be doing with your data and how it's going to help you, down the road.
well, um, let me just now go into in our last, we were scheduled for 40 minutes. So in the last 8 minutes, I'm just going to tick through some kind of
Yeah.
qualitative
Okay.
things. And so we have these 8 personalization areas that we think about for this more personalized buyer journey. And I'm going to ask you to rate them on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 being,
Okay.
hey, this is an important gap we need to solve.
Okay.
1 being no gap at all for us, we're all set. And
Okay.
3 would be kind of we're doing okay, right? Not
Okay.
great, not a lot of work to be done.
So 1 is good, 5 is bad.
Exactly. 5, we need a lot of work. 1, we're all set. So I'm gonna
Got
ask
it.
you to rate 8, and then we'll pick your top 2.
Okay.
All right, so number 1 is just having a simple, clear brand promise, that's consistent across all web and digital channels, so the buyer understands the benefit of working with you.
I would say 2 there. I think there's always room for improvement, always fine tuning, especially as our roadmap evolves, especially as our features and functionality evolve. So that's ongoing, but I think we do a pretty good job when it comes to that.
Cool. The next is website personalization. That we have targeted pages, personalizing value based on buyer goals or
Hmm.
use cases, roles, and
Hmm.
segments.
Yeah. Again, 2. I'm a tough grader, so I'd say 2 as well. Same comment there. I think always room for improvement, but I think we do a good job of breaking those markets down and fitting into each one of those.
Cool. Performance marketing, just kind of personalizing the digital presence, the ads, the SEO efficacy, and the way we bring them to the right pages
Hmm.
on our website.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd say I'm in between on that. I'd say a 3 because I think that there can be again, there's so much noise out there, right? And I think as we go through kind of the next steps in the next phase of our growth, and we look at specifically attracting more enterprise customers. I think from my perspective, that's what I would like to see more of. And I think a lot of those ads and a lot of that marketing now, I think attracts maybe a little bit more of a mid market, smaller mid market to SMB type of buyer. And it's, I think, going to benefit us as we start to, grow our enterprise business. And I think hopefully, that can play a part in it.
Cool. Next one is content strategy, to
Mhm,
guide the buyer journey from engagement to evaluation to conversion.
mhm. Yeah, I'd say a 2 there as well. I kind of lump that into some of the things that we've already spoken about, right? I think we're very strong when it comes to the presentation of where we fit in and the use cases and the problems that we solve. So I think that when it comes to a lot of that, that asset, that content generation that's happening, whether it be materials created or through different platforms that we're marketing on, video assets, things like that. I think that's gone really well for us, and I think that's a strong point.
Cool. Next one is capturing and leveraging peer stories across the buyer journey.
Well, again, we're always learning, right? So I don't think I would give it a 3 because I don't think we fully know the extent of what else could be coming, right? So I think as time goes on, I'd like to see that number come down, but I would also put us right in the middle of that as something that is just an ongoing process for us when it comes to those types of scenarios.
The next one is just use of self-solutioning content, helping basically a buyer do their own evaluation on, checklist guides, things like that, that help to move from MQL to SQL or first to second
Hmm.
call on their own.
I would say a 1. I think that's a big strong suit for us. Absolutely.
Next one is just sales personalization, being able to
Mm.
personalize value in every sales conversation based on goals, roles, and segment.
Again, I would put that as a 1. I think that given how long we've been around, giving our our customer retention rate, I would say, given the LTV of our customer base. I think that is definitely very telling when it comes to our ability to maintain and keep those relationships, kind of prospering, right, and growing. Very proud of the fact that our customer base has been around as long as it has. We've got customers that have been with us since the beginning, which is over 12 years now, right? So I think that's definitely a strong suit for us, and I think that we continue to be able to do that very well.
And the same thing then the eighth is CS personalization. Once
Yeah,
they're customers, that we're always re-anchoring on the customer value or goal at key touch points, kickoff, business reviews,
yeah.
renewals.
Yeah, I'd give that a 2. That's definitely something that has been, one of my priorities since I joined the organization, getting a little bit more formalized and fine-tuned, and again, looking at kind of that first 3 months, looking at, that kickoff portion, that onboarding portion, working hand in hand with the CS team, our support team, our sales team, et cetera, and then utilizing the content appropriately to ensure that the milestones are being hit along the way. When we do some types of proof of concepts, right, we talk a lot about success criteria. So really kind of putting some guardrails within those POCs to ensuring that those ultimately convert, and we take the buyer to the next step, to more kind of that phase 2 approach.
Cool. There are then on sales playbooks, sales and CS playbooks, there's 5 things
Yeah.
we're sort of asking about development on. The first is just thinking about a discovery framework, right? So that there are actually questions that are targeting personalized value based on role, goal, segment. How have you all handled that? How have you built your discovery framework?
Well, we've reworked some of the just kind of initial what we call our sales stages, sales cycles, right? So when I joined GoFormz, I would say that was probably one of our weaker points when it came to due diligence, when it came to technical validations. We saw a lot of drop off when it came to our funnel, when it came to the sales team's opportunities and how they were managing those. So that deal cycle management was definitely something that I really dove into to understand more of the definitions, and kind of putting pieces in place for them and guidelines for them to follow. I think we're seeing a lot more in terms of a healthy funnel, a healthy pipeline now, more quality opportunities, maybe not necessarily as much volume, right, that we saw, but more quality. And we're seeing more consistent opportunities pull through, and more accurate in terms of our forecasting and our predictability. So that really came down to putting in place our solutions consultants, sales engineers, aligning the teams accordingly, to ensuring that the sales team was capturing the things that they needed to in order to feel good about the next step. I always talk about defending your deals. So if anybody that approaches you off the street, or if it's Rob, or if it's whoever, asks you about an opportunity, what are the key points and the key things that you are going to need to cover to feel good about why is it here at this point in time, and why is it closing when you say it's going to close. So we talk a lot about that as a sales team, as a sales organization, defending your deals, and really really doing your homework on the discovery, and getting more in depth in terms of kind of the knowledge base that's required to get to the negotiation and the close stage.
Cool. You guys have for sales decks, do you have a customer story deck that's kind of sortable by goals and market segment? We think of just building a snappable deck so you can
Mhm,
take your top 2 stories and snap them into a slide deck.
mhm. Um, We do, maybe not to that extent, but we certainly do. We have quite a bit, again, of customer stories, use cases, case studies that we utilize within our sales presentations. Yeah. Mhm.
Cool. The other two, it sounds like you have a pretty strong onboarding playbook that connects the sales to CS transition.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it sounds like you have a pretty strong QBR playbook that we always think of. Does your QBR bring back the customer value and
Mhm.
new
Mhm.
use cases?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. A great example of that. I was actually just out in Ohio with the Ohio Department of Transportation, which is one of our largest customers. We ran through, quite an extensive, kind of QBR business review, account review with them. Anytime we are able to execute something along those lines, there's always something that comes out of it. Oh, I had no idea that you guys actually did that, right? So when we have those deep dives with our customers, especially as large as them, and you're getting in front of new people, new faces constantly because new people are being introduced to the account on a consistent basis. There's always a re-education process that has to happen. So I always look at it as, you're always the sale never ends. You're always going to continue to, um, sell and promote and highlight the features and functionalities and all the core aspects of. If you understand why they came in the first place, it's always important to continue to reiterate that along the buyer's journey, along the journey in itself, the customer journey, and all things can always spark interest, or things will always come out because that reintroduction is always going to maybe think of different ways or spark different ways for utilization of a platform like ours.
Well, I have two asks of you, and I
Yes.
appreciate your time to see if you'd be open to it. One is we do a revenue leader series, story series. We've done one probably over 2 years ago with Rob, maybe it's 3 years ago, and then did one with Ren.
Okay.
Rob more on growth through verticalization, and then Ren really on the shift in your demand gen strategy. I think there could be a really interesting story here from a sales leader or CS leader on building that situational fluency. Just the
Mhm.
approach you guys have taken to that pattern recognition.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're open to that, we usually, we just write a 750 word story, give it to you. We do all the heavy lift. We pick a snippet, and then we write a LinkedIn post about 450 words.
Sure. Yeah. Happy to. Absolutely.
Yeah, because it's you guys have a clear strategy. It's awesome to hear you. You guys are also aligned on how you think about personalizing value, and
Yeah.
that's impressive. And it'd be interesting to tell the sales part of the story.
Yeah. No. Again, I think you have to be right. So it's definitely critical there. Big believer in that. Have been my entire career. I've been fortunate enough to work alongside some great individuals, and it's been a pleasure to kind of